Welcome to the fiduciary responsibilities of serving on a board. Many of the examples provided in this presentation apply to the National Sertoma organization, but can be adapted to fit your club's specific needs. Let's start by looking at the basic responsibilities of a board member. A board member must be prepared to govern based on the founding documents and other key pieces of governance work, to focus on the strategic direction of the organization, including its mission and goals, and to uphold any fiduciary duties. Remember, the trust of members is in the board of directors. Board members should also be ready to explore opportunities while being careful with the organization's resources, develop policies and procedures, and manage risks. Everything that an organization and board do should be guided by the mission, vision, and purpose. Sertoma's mission is to improve the quality of life today for those at risk or impacted by hearing loss through education and support. Our vision is to create communities of change under common leadership and with a common voice that will serve the many in need. And finally, our purpose is to meet the needs of communities through volunteer service. Every nonprofit has a variety of documents that either create a framework for governance or serve as tools of governance. Many of these items will be included in a board's orientation manual. Your documents should include the bylaws and articles of incorporation at minimum. Bylaws will include things like membership classes, leadership duties, and other specifics, while your articles will establish your official beginning date and tax status. There are a few more tools that a board member should be familiar with. This includes the budget, which outlines the organization's economic parameters and priorities. A policies and procedures manual encompasses previous motions of the board that have now become policy. Other important documents could include things like the strategic plan and any advocacy or lobbying guidance. The key point here is that for effective leadership, knowledge is power, and the tools of governance should be accessible to the board. Here's the makeup of Sertoma's board. Keep in mind that your club's board will have its own leadership structure. The Sertoma board includes 15 voting members plus the executive director as a non-voting member. There are 5 executive officers, president, senior vice president, junior vice president, secretary, and treasurer, as well as 10 directors, 3 at large and 1 from each of the 7 regions. As a whole, there are many duties the board oversees. This includes establishing the organization's strategic plan, setting any associated annual goals, and monitoring its progress. The board will also help set association policy, approve the budget, and actively promote the organization. Finally, the board helps maintain checks and balances by overseeing the executive director, attorney, accountant, and any other key consultants. While most clubs do not work directly with a hired staff member locally, we still want to make sure the boards understand this important relationship. Board and staff are here to work together as one. While the board focuses on the governance and direction of an organization, staff manages the day-to-day operations. The executive director is the primary link between board and staff communication. This partnership structure prevents any micromanagement of staff and keeps volunteers from becoming too overwhelmed. Here are some standard conduct expectations that come along with being a member of the board. Board members should attend all board meetings. It's their duty to help ensure meetings begin and end on time, and to come prepared by reading the agenda and any support materials. The agenda is there to guide the meeting, so try to stick to the established items up for discussion. It's also important to be respectful of other people and their ideas, and to keep any information and discussions shared during a meeting completely confidential. A strong board member will also think about the organization's future. That starts now with promoting the organization to others. While you cannot speak on behalf of the organization without express consent, you can share your experiences with fellow members and potential recruits. You should also be on constant lookout for strong volunteers, including future leaders and committee members. Your best board members will stay current on issues and trends impacting members and the organization. They will actively participate on committees, complete their assigned tasks, and communicate with leadership and staff when questions or need arise. Now let's think about the duty of care. Your number one responsibility here is to pay attention. Without board oversight, what can your contracted consultants or volunteers do? You need to know what is going on and ask questions when you have them. It's important to be diligent and intentional when making any decisions, as its impact goes far beyond you or just the board. Your duty of care responsibilities also include in paying attention to the law. This includes things like employment laws, document retention, whistleblower rules, and more. By serving a nonprofit, directors and officers agree to serve with faithful allegiance. This service should be without interruption except in the event of extreme life circumstances or a conflict of interest. Let's talk about that a little more. Clearly, you should not use your position to benefit you or your immediate family. But what about a friend? Or what about a friend who runs a company that's truly a good choice for a certain event or program? What about a business associate whose support could really help you out at work? How do you address these conflicts? We usually would suggest recusal in most situations, but it may depend on the varying policies of your club. There are also those private benefits. There are some perks that come along with being a director or an officer. Are they appropriate or are they over the top? If you said the latter, this is known as an excess benefit transaction and can carry significant penalties. So how can your board guard against this? Have a written reimbursement plan in place and never add to it without a vote. You'll also want to have a conflict of interest policy that is signed by every member of your board and kept on file. Finally, a question. To whom do you owe loyalty? Members who elected you, your district, or your club? The answer is that your loyalty is with the entire organization and all of its members. This one is all about mission. Are your decisions faithful to the mission, vision, and purpose of the organization? What about the governing documents like the bylaws? Duty of obedience does not mean my constituents say do this, so I vote this way. Aside from the right thing, are there legal reasons? The answer is a resounding yes. 501c3 of the IRS tax code says that we're formed for a specific purpose, and straying from that is outside the governing documents under which Sertoma was founded. Now, there is some risk associated with board service. First, your bylaws should include a clause about indemnification. This is an agreement between two parties not to hold one of them liable for future legal actions or fines. Remember, written policies exist to guide the board. It's important to return to them when questions and issues arise. Finally, each organization should undergo an annual financial audit. This is a standard of practice designed to protect your club while maintaining the typical checks and balances that any organization should have in place. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. Establishing the rules of authority for your board is also important. This protects you from having someone speak on your behalf without permission. Consider the concept of apparent authority. Care should be taken so that the committee chairs or other volunteers do not usurp the authority of the chief elected officer, oftentimes the president, or take on authority non-specifically delegated. Questions to consider. Who can speak for the board? Who can speak to others on a board decision? This may be a duty of your president, your executive officers, or your entire board. The choice is yours, but it needs to be clearly defined and well known amongst the entire board. Then there's that pesky IRS to think about. The IRS has put increased scrutiny on nonprofit boards and staff in recent years. Board members should be current on the club's UBIT, audit, record retention, and other policy considerations. And don't forget, 990s are public information, so transparency is key. The entire board should review the 990 submission annually. There are a few other financial responsibilities that go beyond taxes. This includes reviewing and approving financial and investment reports, approving the budget, and reviewing the audit. We talked earlier how board members are responsible for recruiting other leaders, which is no easy task. As a board, discuss how you can find, encourage, and train future leaders. Consider things like leadership mentoring, ongoing training, and advertising for leadership. And keep in mind, the best boards will be well balanced. Seek diversity and inclusivity. Committee work can be a great place to start. Now let's look a little closer at the executive team. These officers have special duties that should be outlined in the bylaws. The executive committee may include the president, any vice presidents, the secretary, and treasurer. While this group does not have ultimate authority, they may meet between board meetings as needed. They typically have the authority to make some decisions without the need of an entire board vote, but those actions should be reported to the board by or at the next meeting. Accordingly, all records of action and recommendation should be kept in writing. The roles of the officers may vary based on your own bylaws, but let's examine a sample overview. The president typically presides over meetings, serves as the club's lead liaison, and fills committee appointments. The vice president may serve in the absence of the president. Their responsibilities will also be identified in the bylaws, but can be assigned by the president. Many clubs choose to have more than one vice president. The secretary is the record keeper of your club. They are responsible for all corporate records and meeting minutes and may serve as the chair to the bylaws committee. There may be some other duties that are assigned to them by the president. The treasurer is your financial backbone. They prepare the budget, keep any financial records, provide regular reports, and oversee things like the tax filings. Committees are incredibly important to an organization's success, and board members should plan to actively participate on and/or lead them. Committees allow members to get involved in the process of achieving board goals and serving the interests of members. Committees may produce new programs, curate member benefits, or work on policy initiatives. Whatever their assignment, it must align with overall strategic goals while avoiding risk when possible. Another reminder here, committees are a great place to find your future leaders, so pay attention to your volunteers and their successes. Every club will have its own committee structure. There will be some permanent groups known as your standing committees. These will be identified in the bylaws and may include your executive, finance, governance, and policy committees. You may also have ad hoc task forces that are appointed for short-term specific assignments. We touched on board meetings earlier, but let's go a little deeper. Sertoma typically has 3 face-to-face meetings each year, with others conducted by conference call when needed. We expect everyone to attend and come prepared. The board is there to conduct board work and not focus on committee or staff work. The agenda is your meeting's guiding document. In our case, the president works with Sertoma staff to put together the current issues, member needs, and pending business that should be discussed. There may be times when other officers or directors have items they'd like included. Those should be provided to the president in advance for consideration. Minutes are a record of what occurred at the board meeting. Remember, this is a legal record and must be approved at the next meeting. Minutes should only contain any formal actions taken by the board. They should not include a record of conversations held. Additionally, audio records should not be retained on a permanent basis. To keep meetings efficient and fair, make sure to establish your rules of order. These procedures cover things such as recognizing speakers appropriately, setting time limits, and handling motions. Robert's Rules is the most commonly used system. Finally, the strategic plan. Covering 3 to 5 years, this plan sets the priorities that will serve as the core competencies of the organization. These goals, usually you'll have somewhere from 3 to 7 or so, should have associated strategies and tactics that incorporate committees, volunteers, and leadership. To be successful, strategic plans must consider the mission, vision, and values of your organization. Plans should be realistic and based on the organization's work and financial capacity. And don't forget to include assessments so that you're constantly reviewing the progress of your work. In summary, your experience on the board should be a positive one. As the caretakers of the organization, you will work as one. You will speak as a whole body, with no board member having any more input or authority than others. Remember that you represent the organization at all times. Use business sense, be respectful, share constructive feedback, and ask questions. You can find additional tools anytime in the Club Resources section of the Members Center at members.sertoma.org. Thank you for your service to your club, and thank you for your service to Sertoma.